room. There's our light. Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the September session of the Devils Lake Water Improvement District and call the meeting to order. We have all board members in attendance tonight. Do we need to do roll call? Okay. So next is approval of the consent agenda.
Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public comments. Do we have anybody here that would like to comment before we get into the agenda? All right, we'll roll right in with committee reports. I will report on the sewer committee. Brian Green is still working on getting us a final report of the sewer committee so that we can dissolve the sewer committee and move into more of a citizen committee or group to explore sewer around the back of the lake. And I believe he said in July or August when he contacted us that he would not be able to get that done until October. So we did. That's all we have to report on that. Special projects, events, and communications. All right. Come on up, please.
We just met. Can you hear me? Is that
Yep.
okay? We met actually on the 10th of September, and our meeting was right after we did a West Devils Lake Road pickup. East Devil, I'm having trouble with that, sorry. Right, left, east, west. And we switched from, we were supposed to do the
West.
west side, and we switched to the west.
East.
East.
You're like me with my left and right.
Sorry, because several people had mentioned that actually the East Devils Lake Road looked a whole lot worse than the west. So that's what we did on the 10th, and then immediately following the pickup, we did our business. And Bill Sexton led the group because our chairman was in absentia, playing around in Phoenix area. So Bill led the group, and our first order of business was to review the activities that we had completed for 2019 and discuss successes and needs for improvement, and to decide which ones we want to try to do again for 2020. And we pretty much decided that we felt pretty good about everything that we had accomplished so far in 2019 and would like to repeat those activities in 2020. And the only real change was to switch the way we do that east-west Devils Lake Road cleanup, because it seems like after Labor Day is a really good time to hit that road hard. By then it's been pretty well trashed. So, and and the west side doesn't seem to ever be as bad, and we're not sure why. It has to do with the communities along there or something, but anyway, so that was the only big change that we kind of came up with, and we did decide, actually, Julie Sexton very wisely said we have made that commitment to do the West Devils Lake Road, and that we should continue to follow through with that obligation. And so on September 23rd, there will be a roadside pickup of the West Devils Lake Road. And I heard this evening that we think we have a pretty good sign up already for that. It's a shorter distance, shouldn't be quite as arduous. Not that it was all that arduous to do the other side. Anyway, so we will be doing that on the 23rd. The other activities that we do is the 2 roadside cleanups of those 2 roads. We do a marine safety event in the spring at Regatta Park, and that seemed to have been very successful this last year. So we absolutely wish to do that again unless there's some good reason not to. And also then mentioned at our meeting on a separate subject was, and I don't think anybody in this room probably disagrees with this, the incredible need for some kind of bike lane, walk lane on East Devils Lake Road. It's just too dangerous to even try to walk. A tiny portion of that, especially since they've taken down the signs that used to say no trucks, and we now have log trucks and everything else rumbling along there. And so we did discuss briefly trying to set some things in motion to start a process that could possibly get that accomplished.
That is in Lincoln County's master plan, but there's no funding for it.
We did talk about fundraisers, but very briefly.
It's in the millions of dollars. Because you
So
have to
our
actually,
talk might need to be much.
that's a lot of bake sales. But yeah, we talked about that years ago as property owners on East Devils Lake Road, and it is, the problem is that that road was never designed for that many houses to be put on it, and it was actually a logging road is what its original intention was. And so the right-of-ways even are not big enough to support it. So there would have to be property purchased to even entertain the idea. So it's, I hate to say far-fetched idea, but
Down the road.
well, yeah, especially like knowing there's no funding to even fix the flooding on East Devils Lake Road in the flood area. So get in line.
Okay.
Sorry. I would love it because I used to try to walk that road and I quit because it's like, oh gosh,
It's
No,
dangerous.
I'm going to die.
So dangerous. And then also mentioned at our meeting was, Steve, you mentioned, even though it didn't directly affect our committee, the idea of a committee being formed to take on the fireworks fundraising and all of that event, because right now very few people, including Steve and his wife Nancy, and of course Bill and Julie also, but it would be nice to have a bigger group of people that could actually work on that as a separate committee and take some of the weight off of
Just so I can
everybody
clarify it,
else.
though, so the fireworks are put on by the neighborhood association. So me being part of it, just because we have such a great group of the Special Projects and Events Committee, I was making them aware of that they're looking for volunteers on the Homeowners Association to develop a fireworks committee. And so anybody in the audience, if you want to be involved in Devils Lake Homeowners Association Fireworks Committee, we're trying to put one together for next year.
Super. And I think, other than that, I think it's important to mention, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but we picked up almost 500 pounds worth of
Correct,
trash
500,
this
in excess of 500 pounds.
this last
Tuesday.
pickup, or, yeah, that's amazing. But then when you pick up tires, that adds to the weight.
Shopping carts.
And I do think that we should mention and say thank yous both to Tina and the North Lincoln Sanitary, because they take all our stuff. And also Gerber Tire, I did not know this, but if you try to throw away tires, you actually get charged money. The sanitation cannot take them, and.
No, that's not true. We can take them.
Okay, I misunderstood then. But Gerber
They cannot be
Tire-
mixed in with, they have to be sorted separately, but we can take them and do every day.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Julie was saying that Gerber Tire took the tires that we had.
Correct.
And that normally there's actually like a $20 charge per tire to try to get rid of them. and they waived it. So we
Good.
did want to thank them for doing that, but it's good to know you can take them
Yeah.
too. So, and I think that kind of concluded our meeting, and we had a great pickup, and that's it.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thanks for all your effort. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sue Henderson. Sorry. And we're the Special Projects / Events Committee.
And thank you.
/ communications.
Thank you to the committee members. We had 12 people show up for the cleanup, and the weather broke for us.
Cool.
It was nice.
Where do you meet for the West Devils Lake Road cleanup? Thank you.
At 9 o'clock.
Oh, at 9 o'clock? I put in 10 o'clock. Okay. West Devils Lake Road cleanup meet at Regatta Crowns, 9 o'clock on the 23rd.
I did want to make a
Thank you.
special note here, too. We kind of had a catered lunch after the cleanup, and the district does pay not a lot of dollars, since we know somebody in the organization that's a caterer, to provide lunch for the cleanups. And it certainly helps motivate people to come and pick up garbage when we can get together and have, we had nice salad and wrap, vegetable wrap, and some blueberry cobbler.
Wow.
So thank you.
Cool. All right, Save Our Shoreline and Water Monitoring Committee.
Right, Mary Ellen Rich. All right, Kathy and I received the first two 4x4 floating gardens about mid-April, about 3 weeks ago, maybe?
Probably.
Yeah, yeah.
August?
Of August, yep, yep. And mine, I sent pictures to you. It's blooming. It's doing great. It's sucking up those nutrients. So it's growing good, and I'm thinking Kathy, you should come over and see mine, and I'll see yours.
Right.
Okay. I left a message for Jed at the Coast Community Bank because some people haven't received theirs, and I'm not sure if they've paid for them, but we had paid for ours, so that we get closer to their goal of 15. 2 is not going to do it. So we've got to get some more out on the lake. And so I've got to call into him, but he must have been in a meeting or something. So I'll keep trying to get hold of him. Any questions?
No.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marion.
Devils Lake Conservation Aeration Project, that's you, Josh.
It's at that time already. Everything has been running great with the aeration project. I've been on the lake several times and watched all the diffusers. The lift still looks good per what John Tucci told us we're supposed to be seeing on the surface. Compressor has not actually even shut down in 30 days. We haven't had any brownouts or blackouts or power fluctuations, so I have not had to do a reset. It's been chugging along fine. Compressor temperatures have been spot on, around about 79, 85 degrees, I think. Bill and I have been checking them intermittently to keep an eye on the cabinet and enclosure, but everything's good there. The enclosure is great. Shoreline equipment's great. I have noticed no damage, or I haven't seen any damaged diffusers or anything that would indicate one so far. I did just speak with John Tucci this morning, actually. He's going to be coming, September 31st, whatever that Monday
16th is what it says in the agenda.
Yeah, I know. We changed the date. He was supposed to be coming out then tentatively, and he got caught up on another project. He'll be coming out the 30th,
Oh, okay.
September 30th. He'll be here, and we're going to do a system check, run through the oil and procedures and diffuser maintenance, and just give everything a good once-over and make sure we're spot on for that. Any questions on the lake bottom system? Video monitoring project has been functioning. Went out with Jim Dewey a couple times this past week or two. We did some work on the cameras. They're working again. Jimmy Whistler has volunteered a second location up north on the lake. to get a camera in his place. I'm working with Jim Dewey to get that installed sometime here soon as time allows. And we work with Jimmy's schedule as well. So hopefully we'll have a second one up soon. We've gotten a little better handle on the one down at Vivian's, I think, as far as logging into it and being able to reset it. It's been a lot more stable even this past week that I've seen. So maybe we've gotten through some weird situation now that was going on with the internet, but it has been operating well. The Airstream Pro is back in operation over at Kathy Kramer's dock location where we had it near Sandpoint. Thank you for volunteering that location and place for us to tether that up once again. And thanks to our lake contractor, Bill, for getting it over there and getting it operating, putting a new motor on it and getting everything replaced and ready to go again. Really do believe this piece of equipment's been doing us some good, and I've seen that throughout the conferences I know I've mentioned before as far as treating some of these smaller canals and areas where lake bottom systems are not effective. And we've seen that firsthand as well in the Horseshoe Bay area, which was the pilot test when we took on this piece of equipment. And to this day, approximately 2 years later now, that area is still very clean and has not returned to the historical problems that it had once before with the decomposition smells and just kind of the neighborhood complaints around the area. So we really want to keep that thing firing, and it's back in the water. So. Along that line, another side note, I know we had briefly kind of been talking about, not briefly, but diesel generators to make those a little more portable. I've done some research this week, and what I found, I spoke with Bill as well, and found out it's about a 7,500 kilowatt. Is that correct, I think? I sized those up and looked at them, and that's a pretty small generator. That's really not a big one. You're talking maybe 50 inches long, couple feet high, so not a huge one, something you could put on a small trailer if you want. The issue I ran into is even as a diesel, which is generally the more efficient type of generators, is the fuel consumption rate. To operate for 30 days would be something to the tune of 1,200 gallons of diesel fuel. So unless I find a more efficient option, like I said, this is kind of some cursory information I'm going through, just trying to find some other solutions for these. But that's what I found so far. So that's one of the challenges I'm looking to overcome with the portability of some kind of fuel-based issue. We don't have any issues as far as protecting it and shoreline. We can put plenty of absorbents up and enclosures, whatever we need to do to make any fuel next to the lake fine. But it's actually the consumption of the fuel and the transport of it that is the issue with this. So I'll keep looking at that to see, because I think that's important. That could definitely give us a whole new ability to use that equipment to get it in some areas where we don't have that electrical access. So, but I will update as I find more information on that.
So Josh, one issue is it 1,200 gallons a month now? Is that full-time operating?
That was a half load on a 10,000 kilowatt. So, give or take 5 to 75
Oh, wait, 1,200 gallons, not dollars?
gallons.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
So could that be downsized by operational time? Obviously.
It could be, and like I say, yeah, there's some things there. And I think if we could find maybe a more efficient generator coupled with something like an institutional control of timing it, that it might work a little bit better that way. So it's not completely out. It's definitely something that we still need to research, and I'll continue looking at. And I know Bill will probably poke around and see what he can find too. But that's what I found initially, is we're going to have to look at the
And
fuel
did you
consumption.
look at purchase cost of the generator?
The purchase cost was not bad. It was less than $10,000 for one of those with a essentially
That's
3 to
still
5
pretty
year lifespan. So, compared to how many electrical taps we put up and longevity, something like that's doable. Even generators like that could even possibly be picked up. ODOT or something might have something useful. We're not that far yet. Once we figure out the numbers on it, we find something that would work spec wise, then we can kind of chase that down a little bit more. But I think that I hope we'll find something to make those a little more portable.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I just had looked at this last week the City of Lincoln City's surplus list that they came out with to get approval from City Council, and it had 3 generators in there as surplus. Yeah. So another avenue. I mean, when you're ready to report the analysis of what you found out there, but I was, surprised at the list.
Well, and that's not a bad idea too. Finding some equipment like that, maybe we can shoehorn something in to make it work. If we can get efficiency-wise, I can talk with a city engineer or Stephanie or somebody and see what if they've got a spec sheet or something on it. If it looks like it might might be workable timing-wise or whatever.
Well, and
at
John,
it.
maybe when he comes out, has a better idea.
He might. I really have not got a chance to pick his brain on that as far as the airstreams, so yeah, definitely ask him. And along those lines too, anyone that has any questions for John or anything about the lake bottom system or airstream, get them to me, and I'll make sure that he gets them. So
Yeah, I think it would be really beneficial to have those portable, and not, on the, only in the power areas.
well, it is. I mean, efficiency-wise, we're looking at about an approximate $750 per location tap, which still, given the benefit, is more than palatable. But more bang for your buck. We're a government organization, so I think along those lines as well is let's what can we do per dollar? What are
And
we
then
getting
it's
per
about
dollar?
$600 a month for the electricity.
About less than 3.
Oh, less than
Less than
3.
3 for the electricity, which is great.
So at $3,000 a month for diesel and $10,000 amortized
and like I
out.
said, yeah, this is my initial
Yeah.
estimate of looking at it. So
Put in a lot of those electrical taps is my point.
exactly. So until I find something that might work
Right.
a little better for us,
Okay.
then we're kind of just looking at that still. So
Okay.
D River Devil's Lake flood protection. The sand is still there. There's a lot of it. The good news is thanks
Captain
to
Obvious.
thanks to Kevin Shreve with Civil West Engineering, who completed our recent stream study survey. We know how much of it down there, and we have approximately 2,000 cubic yards which needs removed, and that comes out to about 190 tandem dump truck loads.
Wait.
There's
So, I'm sorry, 2,000 cubic yards?
where's it at in here?
2,300.
2,300.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 230 loads?
About 200-ish, depending on how heavy they load. And we have a short trip, so they could probably get them pretty well packed to get across the street. My initial plan and thought is to get them across the street past Kylo's to the dump site on the beach, because the beaches
Oh.
are sand-starved. There's been a lot of state organizations who have issue with selling any of those materials excavated out as part of a permit. For some reason governmentally, so our better option is to find some natural resources way to donate that material. The good news is that sediment's been classified before as inert. Of course, we know it's safe sand, essentially, so all we need to do is move it from one side to the other. The stream survey, which is in the board's packet, shows the area approximately 100 by 300, and it gets quite a bit more technical than that on the drawings, of course. And we have a cross-section there, too, which shows our existing dam elevation and the buildup that we're looking to remove. And what this information will do, other than just give us the volumes, this will give us a roadmap to put in a permit to the Army Corps when we go out there and try and put shovels in. And that brings me up to the next part of that project. We are looking for methods of removing it, especially now that we have a volume and location scope of what we're trying to remove. I've interviewed a couple of marine contractors. One has met on site. Bill actually met him on site in my absence a couple of weeks ago. It was Jeff with Billiter Marine. I've contacted them twice this past week. They're supposed to be calling me back. His admin said they were on a big harbor job or something to that effect. I have not heard back from him yet. However, I have looked at a few other marine contractors, and I'll be putting in calls tomorrow and this next week to try and obtain more bids. The first round of bidding that I put out in the first few calls I had, I was not extremely successful with getting contractors here. It may be seasonal. You never know with that business. It's so dynamic.
So a couple things, Josh, with the people that have historically volunteered to help with this, I would think that we could move the sand 100% by volunteers if we knew how much sand can we put on the shore at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Like what kind of area do we have to store sand? And then and then the machines on the other side of the river to push out the sand once we're dumping it. I would think that we can get a lot of that voluntarily done as well.
Okay, and I know we've had some conversations with Jimmy Whistler and maybe Nathan Ott, who have extended their help and equipment in the community to help us get that done. So I will definitely be approaching them for that once I.
Yeah, because let's say 200 loads, even if you did, 10 loads a day, which would probably be
That's conservative.
a full day.
Yeah.
But if you had 3 of those running, that's 30 loads a day.
Yeah.
But that's still, 5 days of work for somebody, 3 people to be running full time. So the question would be is how big a pile, where are we putting the sand when we get it out of the river?
Yeah, my initial thought, and I can confirm this, of course, with it'll be OPRD. I'll contact probably Jay and find out exactly, what he would want, where he would want us to push it. They may have some plan. They may want us to get a little farther over by the D River Wayside seawall, because I know they've had major issues with crumbling and things over there. So it may be actually some very good timing to get that out there. So. I'll
So
ask them.
when we take it out of where it is now, where are we going to be
Like
putting
where
it?
we're going to put it, we most likely put it at Hostetter Park and stockpile it, load it into tandems, however the dredge gets it out, and that's a method to be determined still, and then take it into tandems across the street. So stockpile.
So
at
nobody
Hostetter
here
area.
has tandems.
No one has
These would
tandems?
be like drop boxes, dump trucks. So, and even though it's only across the street, you can't haul more than 10 tons.
No. Well, and that's something too with with a
Unless
volunteer
you could
effort. I
get
don't think
some
we
sort
can.
of special exemption, but I
Yeah.
kind of doubt it.
I mean, I don't think we can completely and totally rely on someone to volunteer all of that. It's a fairly major project just from the
But
trucking.
you can't get a tandem onto the beach there at Kylos.
You
Like
don't
you
think?
couldn't physically make that turn.
Yeah. How many yards on a dump truck then? 3 to 5?
10 yards.
think
You
10?
can only haul 10 yards of sand legally.
Yeah. Good to know.
Regardless of how big the truck is, you cannot legally haul more than 10 tons. Now, on a tandem double axle trailer,
Yeah.
as you spread out your wheelbases and stuff, you can haul more, but you can't get that into
That area.
that
yeah.
area.
No,
So
you're
dump
probably-
trucks, you can get into that area. We know that. We've done that before when we've had to clean out.
Yeah,
the
but I mean, 10 yards in a couple of dump trucks running is still good. I mean,
Sure,
that
and that's what
turns- yeah.
I was figuring it on, regardless of whether it's dropped by, you're only going to be able to haul 10 yards, regardless of what
Yeah.
kind of truck it is, legally.
Yeah.
And so, that's a full week of, at 50 yards a day. Or maybe,
yeah.
maybe 100 yards a day. Depending on how many trucks you've got going.
And it's all dependent
how
on
fast the
that,
piece of
yeah.
machinery can push it out,
Yeah.
you've got 8 or
How
10
quick
hours
the
a day.
operators
Right.
are,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering, do you have a place to put 2,300 yards of sand at Hostetler and then have the guys just be loading and hauling, or does it have to be hauled as it comes out of the river? Those are logistic things that we would need to know. What does the footprint of 2,300 yards look like?
Sure. I can find that
So-
out. Yeah.
Okay, because the other thing I would think that everybody would want is that sand to be dewatered as much as possible.
Correct, and that's why that's my primary idea of getting over to Hofstadter Park.
Right.
In addition, any residual sand, of course, would be native, and if anything else, that area is very low.
And how
So-
long can we leave sand there? Like, how much
For
time
sure,
do we have
for
to move
sure.
it? Because
Yeah.
if we have more time, then you have more capability of having it volunteered.
Of course, this is something it would be something I would definitely have to preliminary,
Right.
thought planning process, but I would have to approach the city still and make certain. I've kind of picked the brains of a couple people, and I think that I don't think it would be an issue given what's going on there now for the city's future current plans for the area. But that's definitely some information to look at that I can chase down, because that would give us our time frame on getting out of there. So.
Now, one thing that could take in consideration too is when that is pumped out of the river, it will have a significant amount of water in it, so we'll have to establish a place to dewater it before it's hauled. So sand with water is about double the weight.
Well, that's what I was saying. How long can it sit at Hostetler Park
Yeah.
to dewater?
Yeah,
Right.
because Hofstadter it would naturally
Right.
flow down into the lake, so it would be a pretty good spot to get that physically accomplished as well.
So I have a couple questions. So I know that they do dredging with vacuums. So is there a company out there that you could actually vacuum it under Highway 101?
Just push it out
and
there?
just put it out there? Is there something that you're not doing the impact of that much weight across 101 and on the side streets?
There are some of those. They can be very cost prohibitive, and there's been some issues as of late with that because those type of systems are very related to gold mining and dredging, and our governor has put a lot more recent regulations on operating any of that equipment in waterways, especially
How about
state-owned
conveyor?
waterways. It's the same issue. I just don't know the status of,
I
Any
think
mining
that,
type,
you know,
anything that is mining equipment that you're using even for any purpose there are some new regulations that I'm not completely versed in.
yeah,
yet.
I just think it's worth looking into, because then you wouldn't have to actually let the water out of the sand. You may be able to portable, take it there, or at least to a certain point, and then you have the companies that are volunteering move it from that point down. God, there was another point, and I had lost it. Anyways, I think it's worth checking into, because draining all that water, Hallstetter too, may be problematic.
Yeah.
You know, because it is adjacent to wetlands. So I don't know how much saturation you can actually put at the side of a river.
Yeah.
pretty slow, though, to
Right.
dewater,
So,
which is why you would want it to sit there longer than shorter.
right.
Yeah.
So
We
the-
would need to find out how long it can sit there, will the city allow it to be there
Right.
for 24 hours or 24 days? Like,
And it's pretty coarsely grained too, so it's not going to take an extreme amount of time for that to dewater. But
Yeah, so the other
I can
point
definitely
that I
ask.
did remember was, and I don't know if Civil West actually does any kind of this, so when we have water movement in the river at high lake level, is there a way that we can engineer-wise disrupt with the volume of water? So even though we have 2,300 cubic yards, is there a way that you can dissipate some of that through water flow?
once
And
you
I
get a
don't know
trench
where
dug,
the
can you
expert
get it
is.
moving on its own?
Yeah, get it moving on its own. I don't know who the expert is. I know Civil West is here, but is there a person that could be able to give us ideas and what we could expect on something like that?
I don't know of anybody that can really do something that you're describing as far as using that equipment. I know we've kind of looked at doing some things like sluicing some materials and things that I think those can work in the right circumstance. But I think when we're talking about 200 plus dump truck loads of sand, that we need to look at a larger, more invasive solution to be able to get this out. And furthermore, like we've had in previous discussions, even if we do get a large major capital project, part of that project needs to be maintenance operations, so it continues to stay at a certain level.
Well,
And
that's
we-
what I was going to say is what is the benefit of getting all 2,300 yards out in one fell swoop? Because if we get a permit to maintenance and we take out 10 loads in the first swoop, see what the
Water movement.
hydrology does
Yeah.
with the sand, and then, a month later, 6 months later, do it again, and do it, and because, I mean, I don't want to look at this as a one-time thing of, it's,
300 cubic
Yeah.
yards.
Right.
It's huge.
I mean, and cost-wise, we may be able to spread that out over several budget cycles then as well.
Yeah.
And it may be more cost-effective, more labor-effective, and more maintenance-effective to spread it out. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's definitely something we should consider because, I mean, I'm no hydrologist or waterway specialist at all, but I've played in plenty of streams as a kid, and, you dig a trench and things happens.
Yeah.
And so, it'd be interesting if we took, 500 yards out, what would the river itself do during the wintertime? You know,
Yeah.
when we're not getting pushback from the ocean. I mean, that's the thing, is that we take 500 yards out in one storm event, we get 500 or
Well,
700 yards.
Well, and even previously, the provenance kind of shows that. I've talked with some people that have been around the area 30 or more years, and it's been excavated before.
Oh,
This
yeah.
isn't something completely new.
But not 2,300 yards.
No, but the stuff comes back. I mean,
Well, for
that's
sure, yeah.
that's you know, it's obvious. So that concern is very valid. So I guess that question is kind of brings us back to the discussion that we've talked about before. Whereas, can we extend an emergency permit? And we haven't gotten a good answer from not DSL, but the Corps on that.
Okay.
They've been very
So
stringent.
we may be looking at a one-shot pony here?
That's what I'm looking at the moment. Now I can approach this conversation with them, but it's a square peg in a round hole with government regulators with things like this, and we're such a unique situation that it's already an individual consideration when they consider any of our permits. And I think that's what's happened, even with the aeration system, is there's no provenance. So this hasn't happened before. They don't know there aren't that many lakes connected to the Pacific Ocean by a 120-foot river that have tidal sands. There are drainage ditches that they take care of in East Oregon. There are soil and water conservation districts that they clear ditches out of and things and manage. But there aren't any other Devil's Lakes connected to the Pacific Ocean.
So what is the city's emergency permit? I don't understand, and I know that permit has been in place for a long time, so maybe if they went to get it now, they would be under the same frustrations, but it seems to me that permit could just be A, extended, or B, duplicated for the east side of the bridge.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
It's all the Army Corps of Engineers. It's their decision.
But I mean, the Army Corps approved the west side of the bridge.
Yes.
As an emergency.
Yes.
So there.
I wish I could explain to
Okay.
you the rationale.
I guess I just.
I
They
truly
haven't
don't
given
know.
you an answer?
No.
to that?
No.
Okay.
It's just it is the regulation, and that is how they have been interpreting it and reading it.
And okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so what's next with that, Josh?
Next is going to be finding the solution to remove it and the funding still. One follows the other, of course. I'm looking at a suction type option. That would be the best. Bill had actually sent me a really neat video that was the direction I was trying to go, and that's why I contacted Billiter Marine to say that particular type of work. It was my thought that maybe they could even connect a pipe under the bridge or something and use that sort of method and skip the trucking situation. Like I said, I haven't had much luck getting anything. They did show up on site. They have not gotten me a price yet. Still waiting on that, so I am going to follow up with some other contractors that I've contacted and some new ones and try and get dollars to no nuts on this, because that's literally the only holdup as far as the rest of the project. As soon as I get a price per foot or yard, as far as a removal, that can be either permitted or considered by the Army Corps. We can all talk about it, and then we'll know exactly where we're at, what our next step is going to be on that project.
Cool.
Water quality, everyone's probably pretty familiar with this one. This past month or so, we've had a fair amount of algae that have blown up in some of the normal places around Regatta Park, where the wind tends to conglomerate at some areas up around Nyatsu as well, and Mid-Lake. However, just like last year, I didn't see it completely all over the lake. There were certainly some very heavy pockets in some areas, but it didn't seem as intense as it was last year, nor did it seem to stick around as long as it did even last year. The previous years, of course, I was only here a year before that, 16 and following, but you all can attest to what we're looking at here. What I've heard from residents is that it seems thinner. It seems like it's less prolific throughout the lake, and it appears to be here for a lot less time than it generally is as far as the warmer season. Our pH has been great, and we've been right around 7.4, 7.5, which is outstanding for natural waterways. Not a lot of waters even attain that. Our DO levels, which is the best news, especially from our aeration system on the lake bottom, appears to have worked as far as at least the performance guarantee that we had asked from Lake Savers. Our dissolved oxygen concentrations are over 95% on the bottom of the lake and have been all summer. I've not seen them drop the past 3 years. I've been measuring the past 2 years with the EXO alone, which is the same equipment spanning multiple years. So that's very good. Dropped the past previous 2 years that I've been sampling out there. It would find its number, the sensor would, stabilize, and then you would watch it slowly decline. This year is the exact opposite. You can get it into various scenarios as far as in and around the sediment and the mud, and there are different ways to tell on the sensor readout where you're at underwater without seeing it. Is doing the exact opposite. It's stabilizing and it's climbing. And that goes for approximately 500 yards north of our treatment field, the 50-acre field, and south as well. South was the only part of the dissolved oxygen readings I took this year that I saw any minor fluctuation. It only got down to about an 87% at one point, which is still extraordinarily high for oxygen readings.
So you said it goes 500 feet north of the first aerator to the north. And did we think we would get any stirring or movement beyond that, or did we not know?
It was our hope that the natural wind action in the lake and putting the diffusers in the I think it's called the Thalweg, the ancient river bottom of Devil's Lake, which ran through out to the ocean, the deepest part of the lake, would be the best option, because that's where the water flows, essentially. It's an old riverbed, still the water flows there. I've been out there several times. I'm sure anybody who's fished out there has dropped a lead weight on the bottom and felt that pull some days, yanking on it, that the water moves out on the bottom of that lake, and even on the top you can visually see with water. We're hoping that that's what happened. It appears that's what's happened, is that extra oxygen that's been put in the lake has mixed around and increased the dissolved oxygen on the bottom. We've seen the parallels in that, the things you want to see from a change like that happening. We've seen more plant life, which we'll get into here in a little bit. We've seen more fish. We've definitely seen more fish in and around the water. We've seen higher water clarity in these past 2 years. I think even a little clearer this year than it was last year before we'd operated the system as well. So all positive so far. As with anything else, we're definitely changing things and we're monitoring them. So as we move forward, we'll keep an eye on it and manage as needed. Get on to the. Would you like to go ahead and discuss the plants? I need a couple minutes to set up that PowerPoint and all that business.
Do you,
You want to skip that and
general
come back?
operations, do you want to hit that?
Yeah, we can do that. We'll come back to the plants. Bacterial sampling season is over, thanks to Alex here, making sure that I didn't fall off the boat. The rest of this year has been great. Our samples have came back excellent this year in comparison even to previous years. We have seen a lower concentration than the past 3 years from what I've seen. Even in the D River this year, where they're finding on the beach side a lot more E. coli issues and things like that with the water from shorebirds and other things. So that is absolutely great news for us. All the sample results are up on DLWID.org, and we are done with those for the year. Along those lines, though, I know the board and management is having a conversation about watercraft and some more district operations as far as sampling more in the winter and year-round. And I know, just to get it out of the public, we're all working on that, and we're looking at the best options for us to be able to accomplish something like that beyond just our regular bacterial sampling season. So.
Good. So we have, as a board and as staff, received quite a bit of communication on vegetation and, hey, Tina, the stuff's growing at my dock. What is it? Is it supposed to be here? Blah, blah, blah. So we asked Josh to put together a presentation on vegetation and then our preliminary plan to manage the vegetation. And so I think the button for the screen is there on the wall. Are you putting it on this computer?
Yeah, give me just a couple minutes. I gotta
Okay.
turn buttons on and get stuff
Okay.
together. So you might want to take 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or we could,
Or do you want to finish and then do it, or?
well, you can be doing that, and we can, well, let me see here. I guess everything else regards you. So we will take 5.
I had to eat something.
Receive a, did you receive a letter from county regarding a renewing of flood zones around the lake? And so I was gonna mention that, because I think it could affect all of us. And I'm not sure what, have you looked at that? I haven't.
I just looked at the letter last night.
Right, I did too, so, yeah, that affects us all. That'd be interesting.
I'm just wondering what will happen. Yeah, but isn't the elevation still way above the dam? No, the base of the dam. Is it, what, 11 feet? Or I'm not, sorry, no, 8. 8. So, I mean, because the elevation of sand is what now? Up to,
I don't remember, you have the drawings? Because it's that weir, I guess they call it a dam, it's the weir. And so if you dug a channel to try to get the scouring motion, it just comes up against that.
so, but here, anything above this line, right? Right there?
So that, yeah, would flow over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that,
that's
I
true.
mean,
Yeah, that's true.
we wouldn't get it all, for sure. But I'm just wondering, like, what happens if you take 500 yards out? Do you get a net of 800 yards?
I think you probably pay what I do.
Probably it's better, so it'd be cheaper to have the water just do it itself.
For sure.
Point. That's a good point.
Kevin, we did a little experiment with plywood
Yeah, that doesn't work.
when the water was up at 10.2, and we did scour about several hundred yards in just 4 hours. And that was when the dam was out, so that the sand elevation was at about 11 and a half feet. And we put in a plywood diversion approximately 80 feet long from the north shoreline to the middle of the river, and it made a significant trench in 4 hours. So that's, yes,
We do.
it comes out, it's removable. October 15th, it comes out, and the top of the concrete. I didn't know that. Oh, okay. So the top of the concrete is at 8 feet above sea level. And typically,
Which is about where the bedrock is under the bridge.
But, you know, I noticed
Then
your,
you
I
look at-
noticed your drawing saying it was 12.5 feet.
The top of the.
sand, or the
The
dam.
top of the dam you said
That
was
benchmark.
12.5 feet, and we have it at 8 feet.
Maybe on the next drawing.
Right here.
Yeah.
So, normal riverbed elevation, take the base elevation, 11.
So probably-
Just
Yeah,
top.
12 and a half the existing.
Yeah.
So that's top of dam.
That's the top.
So,
Right.
yes.
Well,
When it's installed.
that was one of
Yeah.
my questions, because really the top of the concrete is at 8 feet instead of 12 and a half, which you have here.
But we shot it when the dam, I guess, was in. I didn't realize you could move
Oh,
that
I
fast.
see.
yeah.
So it's
I
even
see.
higher.
Yeah.
So it's
So there's even
low-
more sand.
Well,
Correct.
well, the level of the water and the dam is substantially lower. It's at 8 feet rather than 12.5.
So that means there's even more than 2,300 yards of
I
sand.
don't know.
Well, no,
'Cause-
everything is based on the 12 point.
Right, so if you
So
drop that
there's-
down to
That's where the
8,
sand
then you
was.
have an increased elevation of sand, right? If you were assuming that the base was 12.5, you drop that down to 8, now you have 4 feet of whatever that distance is.
I wondered about that because
I
when
didn't realize I didn't realize the dam could be removed. I thought it was just always there.
Oh, no, we have to
But
remove
if
it by
there's
law.
a concrete foundation.
Yes.
At 8 feet.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got, we only assumed 12 feet, we assumed a foot below, so you're another
4 feet,
4 feet.
4.5 feet, if you did it at 12.
So that's pretty.
So if you take the length times the width times 4 feet, that's probably another 1,200 yards.
That's math, I don't get into that stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
See, here you go.
yeah, you're probably,
When I saw.
What's the
that,
length?
probably at least the double,
The
right?
right measurement, huh?
So, yeah, because all we did is took, yeah, we just went down to 11 feet. So, yeah, if you remove that. yeah,
So that's
more.
3
You
feet.
remove that and you've got, yeah, you can get probably some pretty good scat work.
Yeah, we
Well,
did.
We tried that, I mean, we did get some, but we couldn't get enough. because
Well, yeah, I mean, but if you,
the Boards and stuff, we got this, you know, we got.
Well, there was no
erosion.
dam.
Pardon me?
There was no dam when we did that.
Right, I know that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
know
Yeah, the
that.
plywood boards you're talking about.
Yeah, when we managed, tried to do that, we were out
Right,
there
right.
5 more hours, 5 or 8 hours, I think.
Right. But you did have some movement though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So much so that the rebar that we'd stabbed in the stand was starting to fall down.
Really?
So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it was, I thought it was very significant.
Well, if you could do something temporary,
And they do make.
no, just put it in there, let
plastic
it do its thing.
stanchions.
You don't have to be there, and then you
Which
move it
website
as
we
you
went on
need
to
to
in
move
Denmark
it or
and whatnot,
anchor
when
it.
they have
I
floods, they
found
put these plastic stanchions up, just use water pressure.
Online.
It's a foot, and the water holds the foot down, and then they just have a small wall. So,
Set on asphalt.
concrete, yeah.
ask Josh to bring that up again, but that's pretty significant.
Application. but
Could you use like ecology blocks
To do what, I missed?
to build like a, you know, a chute
Version.
or,
Versionary wall.
So we should probably get this more in public content rather than having private conversation.
I think we're still,
fulfillment.
yeah, we're still on that.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that might be something to look into as far as
Josh?
rediscovering the actual.
Oh.
concrete.
I thought that was is that your phone?
No. This is the thing through Dropbox, but for some reason my phone Dropbox didn't put the revision on there with the extra
Oh.
plan information, and
Gotcha.
that was like, why are you
Oh,
not
darn.
there? It's supposed to be the same thing all the time. That's why I use your Dropbox. you know.
Yeah, Dropbox should save.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that issue, but like I'm looking at it right now, I'm like, revision 1? Where did you go, revision 1? You're in Dropbox. You're supposed to be here. And I always bring my USB backup, and of course it didn't.
Not
It made it
tonight.
into the other shirt tonight, so. But I do have the initial one, at the very least I can do that. I can post the other one up to the website and.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for being here.
that
You
thing.
bet.
So, if you want to move through, I can give this one, and then I can fill in on the slides that aren't in here. and
Okay.
I'll republish that, we'll get it out to everybody.
All right.
So, whenever you are ready.
Go ahead. I think we're all ready. Everybody's back here and. Oh, sorry. Kent went to the restroom, I think.
Oh, that's all right.
Here he comes.
Okay. See the screen and talk at the same time. We can do this. I think so. I got it. I got this. Okay. Everybody ready?
Yep. Can everybody see the screen okay? Do we need to turn lights off or anything?
Everybody
I
good?
think it's plenty bright. Okay.
Okay, I try to keep it bright. So tonight I put together a brief aquatic vegetation management update, especially because we've been seeing a lot of this coming in. The district's been receiving a lot of phone calls and a lot of concerns. Certainly one of the issues that Devil's Lake has dealt with in the past as far as supporting its recreational, cultural, and navigability. What we did, staff and I conducted an in-water survey of Devil's Lake. We mapped the whole shoreline of Devil's Lake, approximately 0.3% of the shoreline. We looked approximately 50-ish feet out, give or take, approximately from the shoreline. That was about the area we observed. We quantified that from the areas. I do have a map. I don't have AutoCAD, so it was unfortunately, I didn't get a map put together for tonight to show it, but I do have those in field notes showing the exact area, exact approximate dimensions of what we'd seen and what we had seen there, species-wise. What that came out to was a little under 100,000 square feet full of coverage, which comes out to 0.3% of Devil's Lake shoreline. That shows a significant vegetative aquatic plant growth. The signifier we used for that was anything approximately more than about 5 feet square that we found as far as plant growth. So about that rate is visible from a boat. Current recommendations, of course, that we've seen in past information and studies show that Devil's Lake would have a healthy aquatic macrophyte population at about 20%. So we can see we're at 0.3 right now. We definitely visually have more plants coming in. If nothing else, that's definitely a testament to our residents and community keeping an eye on the waters in Devil's Lake, which is certainly what we want and what we want to see. But it's our, certainly our charge and responsibility to get this information out. We're going to continue doing that more so in the future, especially in regards to vegetation. This is what we have found so far. We will be continuing monitoring this in the future as far as the growth rates, especially as we come into the season where the plants are to become more vegetative, which will be coming out of the winter, late winter and spring season. What we have been seeing in here is a lot of Valsnaria americana. I got the last part right. Water celery, tape grass, eelgrass. It's very common. Wait, now there it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's the pictures.
Okay, well, they came in. It's the right one. No apology necessary. This picture is actually taken off of Sandpoint area. I believe these came from Mark Christie. Mine didn't turn out for some reason. The light was terrible, but his were perfect. So credit to him on getting these for us. Like I said, very common, not invasive. It was, however, an introduced species, and it was introduced for the purpose of supporting fish and wildlife. So it's actually a good thing that we see it rooting in our lake, that it is being prolific, because it's generally not a problematic plant. This is not usually one of the plants, and generally, historically, is not one of the plants you see over vegetating a lake as it did in Devil's Lake previously, 30 to 50 years ago, 30 years ago. It usually reproduces, well, it does reproduce by runners. It doesn't reproduce by fragmentation, which is problems that we find with things like milfoil when we find the really invasive species, whether they're introduced or not. Generally, it's a fragmentation that is the issue, because it gets cut by a boat prop, someone cuts it, someone harvests it, it still reroots readily. This does not reroot in that fashion. You can cut the leaves off and they die.
The leaves die.
The leaves will die. The plant will
But the
not
plant
rise them,
does
so
not.
you're talking
Right.
like lilies,
Right.
basically. Same basic reproduction. So, and also why those things have done so well in the lake and have been preserved this long, even after, grass carp predation and everything else. So, and like I mentioned, they were introduced, and they do not appear to be causing any of those macrophyte problems in lakes for overvegetation or otherwise. The other plant I'm sure everyone's very familiar on is spouterdock in the lake, which is a cow lily or a yellow lily. It's also a native. It is not invasive. It can be harvested. It can be cut from around people's docks. It is very heavy. It's one of the more difficult plants to deal with as far as removal and biomass is concerned. It's very common. It's found all up and down the West Coast. Our particular species of it is called Polycephala. It is the same. It produces by seed and rhizome, which is interesting. Does provide shelter for fish. I've also read, I don't know if it's in here, but it does provide some shading to the water as well and decreases some water temperature. So it definitely does have some fish and wildlife and water quality benefits. Also native, non-invasive, so nothing to worry about. If it becomes a nuisance around a dock, a waterway, it can be harvested, it can be cut. Our guidance, especially as the district and anyone else, is going to be that if you do cut or harvest any vegetation out of the lake, please remove it from the lake and the water itself. That will continue to cause us problems if someone clips the grass and throws it back in the lake, or even cuts aquatic plants in the lake and they start to decompose more. So if you can do your part, and if you want to clean up around your dock, please do so, but take it out of the water for us. I have a couple of options here on tap of ways that we can harvest this vegetation as it becomes more prolific in Devil's Lake. As I mentioned before, we're at a 0.3% coverage right now, so probably not even next year, probably maybe not even the year after that will we need to do something like this, but having the plan in place, we have the luxury of right now, so I'm certainly glad we're having this conversation. What I've found through my research in aquatic vegetation harvesting is that mechanical harvesting is going to be one of the best options for Devil's Lake. That's for a lot of those reasons I've already discussed. Even if it's a fragmenting type plant, mechanical harvesting removes generally 95% of the plant material from the waterway. So you get less reproduction from the plants that do reproduce that way. You also get the best reduction in decomposition, detritus, and everything falling back down the lake and re-decomposing and adding more nutrients. So in that way, it does a great job. This is something that biological controls don't do. Whether you're talking about phoslock or an alum treatment or something, they don't remove anything. It's still in there. It treats it. It's short-term, and it's very expensive. And in some regards, grass carp the same way because they take care of the problem, but it cycles back into the water. It's fully understood that everything that grass carp ate is still in the water, in nutrient form or in some other form. So that's one of the reasons for this. Now there are
Poo is the technical term.
Poo. Nice. What I have done is I've called a couple of vegetation contractors. The best one I found so far is called AHI, Aquatic Harvesting Incorporated. We spoke with them about a year and a half ago, and I've recently contacted them again. They're still in business. They're still up here at least 4 to 5 times a year or more in our area, have several other lakes. They even go into Idaho area and do the same thing. They're professionals, and the packet was really big already, so the board does have a small packet on the contact that I had with them last year, and that pricing still is good. I don't think the packet had pricing, but what I was quoted today was approximately $1,600 a day for work with about a $2,000 mobilization fee, and that's round trip. So $2,000 to get them in our area to our lake, and about $1,600 a day to get it in, cut, and on the shoreline. If you want a conveyor belt and an extra truck, it's about an extra $250 a day for that. Also not too bad. If you're talking about a 20% coverage on Devil's Lake, which we're quite a ways from, that's still a palatable cost for the district to be able to cut at a rate of 2 to 3 acres per day, hired, without having to take on any of our own equipment. And that'll bring me to the next slide that I have here. Come on, there it is. It's not liking me tonight. I've looked at several different pieces of equipment. I found a couple of different harvesters. I found some really great ones that don't cut, but they pull. They all have the same kind of issue. It's a very large piece of capital equipment, and not one, but at least 2 of these contractors I've talked to. And of course, it's their business, and they want your business, but they do say it's very labor intensive. It's very maintenance intensive, and I can see all the moving parts. And just about anyone who's worked with machinery and equipment could deduce that that's going to be a pain at the very least to deal with. So hiring this out may be what we want to incorporate in our future plans for vegetation management moving forward when we start having to move out, move larger amounts of plants or vegetation out, or start some maintenance operations with the plants. So that would be a lot for the district to take on, and there would be a lot of things that have to take place before I think we could even consider a piece of equipment like that, and health and safety definitely being one of them. There are a couple of other options I put up here. They're not quite as popular, and I just want to get them up just to have them out there. There's some suction harvesting. I know we've talked about some different things like this, and I briefly spoke about how there's been some more regulation with gold dredging and things in the state. So anything suction-wise is now a little bit up in the air, whether it says it's for gold or not, or who manufactured it or put together is using it. But at any rate, suction harvesting for vegetation doesn't remove sediment anyway, so it's not very effective. It kind of has a very small footprint. It's slow. It's not really a great option for any decent volume. And there it is. Creates turbidity, state's considering it dredging. There's some problems with that. So we've got bottom barriers. They're cheap and easy to construct. They kill plants quickly. They're good over dense patches. But
What is a bottom? Oh,
it's basically like a landscaping fabric for water.
Oh, wow.
So time-consuming, tedious to place. Along with that, we have a lot of wave and wind action and things that just make these things very incredibly difficult and maybe not even a good option for us. But as I said,
especially with the aerators, I would think.
yeah, I mean there are things to consider, and I think these are more used around people's docks and things, as opposed to open water. But so there's a lot of challenges with those as well. Hand pulling, and we briefly talked about this, and this actually is a good option around private property, around personal docks. This is one of the best ways they can do it. You can get a fair amount of everything out. You obviously don't have to hire a contractor or equipment, and this falls squarely in the realm, I think, of everyone's civic responsibility to maintain their own waterways and their own property and preserve that. No city, no state, no municipality that I'm aware of, harvests aquatic weeds from people's personal docks and areas. And even if we could have that policy, we don't have the funding to pursue something like that.
So just to clarify, because we've had this question asked before in a meeting, we can pull lily pads in front of our docks or our property, and we can pull, if other vegetation comes around the docks, that can be pulled. And the only caveat is it has to be removed from the water.
Correct. That is my understanding of the current regulations on any non-protective species, especially an invasive species. Do whatever you want, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Parrot feather, milfoil, they truly, for lack of better words, don't care what you do to get rid of it if it's positively identified as one of those, because they're so extraordinarily
What
destructive.
about the yellow iris? I've heard that are those an invasive?
Yellow flag iris, they are invasive, I believe, here, but they're more of a shoreline plant. So they grow up in that couple of feet, I think, and maybe Kent can correct me on this, but somewhere within that 5-foot boundary.
Right. Yeah, I have them. I've been growing out quite a ways.
Yeah. So, and I would imagine I'm more of a water guy, but same deal. If it's an invasive species, I mean, they want you to get rid of it. Purple loosestrife is definitely another one that we have, and I've seen, and that stuff just takes off like fire. So.
Okay.
Yep. And that one's really easy to spot when it's in bloom. So it's everywhere. So here we go. No current permits needed. That can change almost weekly, but cheaper on small scales. Everyone can get to it themselves, and it can reduce the regrowth, of course. Disadvantages are it's a little slower, so it's better suited to private property owners. It's and I know we mentioned with some of our board members, you can't get that deep. You have to put on scuba gear to be able to get to some of it, so you can't get to deeper waters. 3 or 4 feet in some of these areas where you're in a foot of muck doesn't give you a lot to work with. So when and where you can. And it can also be difficult to remove the plant, and I know people that have done that and done some work around removing them. Some of these plant roots can go meters into the soil.
Oh, wow.
So something to consider as far as that. But certainly, definitely a good way to keep things cleaned up and keep those out of the waterway. That is all I have tonight for the vegetation presentation. I didn't want to keep everybody here too super long, but I did want to get that information out, and this is something that I'm working with the board on too, just so everyone knows. I'm going to get this information out on the websites, out in the newspapers, out in the general public, because I know all of us that spend the time to work on these projects and work on the lake and do things, we all know it, and we take that information for granted. But it's another difficult step, but it's something that I know the district needs to do to make even greater efforts to get more of this information out, because we have been doing a lot of work and we've been doing a lot of great things, but
well, and we're
people
going
don't know
to
unless
see
we
changes
tell
in
them.
the water with
So,
the changes we've made.
for sure.
There's going to be changes in the water, and
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing, and maybe I missed it, Josh, but we noticed the revegetation of the lake prior to putting in the aeration system, and so we saw the initial starts of some of these the water celery growing last summer, and so it's not just the result of aeration; it's really the lack of grass carp that in my view.
Yeah.
Now the lake is starting to recover.
Yeah. I would say, I would agree with Ken on that. Common sense would dictate that the grass carp have been controlling the vegetation for 30 years, and almost immediately after a sea lion destroys the population and they're well past their usable lifespan, we start to see that. And I witnessed that as well the past year or so. We went out and observed some regrowth that had not been there before as the grass carp had declined.
So can you address the grass carp option?
The grass carp right now is not one of our best options to pursue. Vegetation management and harvesting seems to be better for a lot of reasons, a lot of the reasons I've just described. Affordability is even one of them that I didn't mention. It's a lot more controllable. We know exactly what it's going to cost. We know exactly when it's going to cost that much money. Grass carp are expensive. They're up to upwards of $20 per fish now. We can't put that many of them in, so even what we did before, we can't rely on the provenance that'll be effective again because we put a lot of grass carp in. Now you're allowed 100, a few hundred. There are even caveats in some of that regulation that request that you remove the grass carp at the end of the season. We can't do those things, obviously.
Grass carp derby.
Yeah, what I'm getting at, I guess, is to not to beat a dead grass carp, but they have made it extraordinarily difficult. They have put every regulation in place that they possibly could, so someone like ourselves or anyone with our particular need to use a biological control like that would have the greatest difficulty possible doing it. Individual conversations with different regulators involved in fish and wildlife don't look favorable upon it. Of course, they welcome any appeals or conversation you want to put into it. But I know the district has approached this before as well, and the answer was post-aeration, a couple of years of data. And it's just something that they're definitely not in a hurry to do. The first stocking or the first two stockings worked just way too well, and I think what they learned from that, and not to speak for them, but from a liability standpoint, from a 1,000-yard view, is that if they do anything like that again, they want to be absolutely sure that it's going to be controlled, monitored. And I suppose the issue with that is they don't have any of that. That's something that they don't have with lamprey surveys, with GOHO surveys in a lot of places and things. They may not have those established methods just for your waterway. So they can regulate it.
So if we do build, not a case, but I mean, if we keep data for, we're almost 1 year into the aeration. If we keep data for another year and keep track of vegetation, and as a district, we decide that we do want to explore the grass carp thing, we need that data to even explore the idea. Because to me, I'll just be blunt, is if I'm one of the permit givers, pick an agency, I don't know which one it is, but I would be saying, you're 6 months post your grass carp being gone, you have 0.3% vegetation, you want 20, why on earth are you even talking about grass carp right now?
That's where we're at.
So, but we can continue to keep track of this vegetation issue, and if we get to a point, then we could possibly go to them and say, okay, because, it makes sense to me, like, put 100 in, see what happens. Put another 100 in, see what happens, instead of 7,000 or whatever the number was that we put in. Yeah. Not that I'm putting anybody down for, we had a horrible situation and they fixed it, but.
Well, and I agree with that from a permitting and management standpoint. Putting in a permit now, what?
Right.
Why?
We have no basis for a permit right now.
Why are you asking for this? As an option on the table, I don't feel any option, especially one that has worked before, should be completely taken off. It can always stay there, but I think the other more palatable options, the doable ones that also have provenance, will be shown. When the grass carp were stocked 30 or 40 years ago, technology, especially in aquatic weed harvesting, wasn't the same. Things have improved greatly, even in just that machinery.
And I have one more question. So back in the 80s, milfoil was the problem. So do we have any detectable milfoil in the lake?
I have not seen any, and I have not had any.
And is it
report.
possible that the grass carp like eradicated it, or is it something that like the eelgrass has been down there and is going to show up any day now?
Milfoil is generally more of a free floater and doesn't produce from those heavy rhizomes like some of these other lilies and things do. Usually when it's gone, it's gone. Even things like aquatic herbicides can take care of it, and it doesn't usually come back after eradication. That being said, it's highly invasive.
So it could come in on a broke
boat
pot or
washes,
something.
jet
Okay.
skis, a fishing rod, and because it breeds from fragmentation, that makes it nasty.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments on vegetation? Thanks, Josh.
No problem.
You.
Let me find my agenda here again. New business. Resolution to move funds from the improvement fund to the general fund for the D River survey. Oh, stay. Did you shut that laptop down or the computer down?
No, I didn't. I'm going to
Okay.
go turn that thing off.
I'll do it while you talk.
All right. Thank you. We need to move $8,500 from the improvement fund to the general fund, which will be expended under the consulting line item, and it will cover the payment of the D River stream survey that we spoke about tonight. So that's the best way to do it. It was something that came up as we moved through this project, which is why we need to make a resolution to move this money from one fund to the other.
So I'll make a motion to move $8,500 from, it was going from what fund?
The improvement fund to
The
the general
improvement
fund.
fund to the general fund. Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Can I, one thing, I know that when we had our little break, are we going to get an updated survey with the difference of information from the height of the dam?
So during the, just to bring everybody up to date, the survey that we received, Civil West presumed that the dam level was the top of the dam, not realizing it was removable. And so the base of the dam with the boards removed is actually 8 feet, and in this elevation, he has it at 12.5 feet. So that is going to affect the amount pretty significantly of what it is. So Kevin, you want to come up?
You want to come, yeah.
You know, and that gave me a chance to also think about what had transpired. Talking with Josh and with Tom, I think that was the intent, was to survey the top of the dam, that what it was, because even if, and I didn't realize you could remove it nonetheless, but if you drop it 8 feet, the majority of your time with the dam is still going to be 12.5 feet. Because you could,
Only April 15th through October 15th.
I guess, stand for whatever information you want to see. We can drop it.
It just seems to me that if you assume that it was at 11.5 feet, that's what you were talking about, a foot below that. But the reality, it's 3.5 feet below that. And so you would multiply, in my mind, the amount of sand that needs to be removed by 3.5 times.
3.5 more feet.
3.5 times, yes.
Like-
Or I guess, I don't know, but I just was wondering, because the initial amount seems to be, you came up with 2,300 cubic yards.
Right.
And so if it's 3.5 feet below that, I don't know what that figure would be, but it would be easy to calculate what that would be if in fact that's what needs to be removed.
So is that what the district would like is to ultimately have the ideal level of the channel to be at the 8-foot mark as opposed to,
Right, it should be,
Am I
it should
wrong
be.
in this?
No,
That's how
I
it's
agree,
on.
maybe I'm misthinking with you, but in my mind, right behind the dam is the bedrock. And Bill would be the best person for this, but my understanding is that the base of the dam is the same height as the bedrock. So we don't want to go below that, because then we would just have a natural dam at the bedrock. But the original, or the original / natural level of that area should be at 8 feet, and anything above that is sand that has come in. And so if we're going to remove it, let's get it down to back where it's supposed to be.
Well, remember on our drawings, though, the bottom measurement is correct. So what I hear you say, Kent, is the top of the dam was mentioned in the survey.
Yeah, I
Which-
No, the
understand
bottom,
Joe's
it says
calculated,
assumed
Kevin.
riverbed at 11 feet, but the riverbed is 8 feet.
No, because it's lower.
Assumed riverbed, and it's
Do you see
we
what I'm?
just assume that for purposes of calculating volume is all we did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So if you move that line down 3.5 feet,
Could be more volume.
there's more
Oh,
volume.
yeah, no, absolutely, 100%.
Well, and we want it for permitting purposes, we actually need the correct amount of volume is what we need.
Well, and
So,
we don't want the permit to say we can excavate down to 11 feet.
well, that would mean that you drop this down to 8. So I guess what we're asking, now that you have this information, can you adjust these diagrams under the current contract?
We'll do it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Am I wrong, Josh, in that, in that assumption? Or-
No, I think that's fine, and I think having it more readily available on paper is fine. I understand Kevin's perspective too, coming from an engineering background. It's your perspective as far as where you want to put it and look at it. But as far as having it all in the drawings for the permitting, which is the primary purpose of, doing this for the Corps, I would appreciate it if we could just bring them into line. And
Thank you.
No, that's good, well, thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad we talked about that.
So, just for more discussion on this, since we have a motion in a second, so we've already paid them 50%, and so really, this is a technical issue in moving the funds in the budget, this $8,400. So it shouldn't interfere with
No.
anything else.
And the funds were approved.
They were approved, yes.
the plan and the funds and everything. So, just to cross the T's and dot the I's, make sure we have our resolutions in place.
An accounting thing that
Yep.
I'm not an expert in.
All right, any more discussion? We have a motion on the table in a second. Okay, all in favor of motion to move the $8,400 from the general or improvement fund to the general fund, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion approved. Lake contractor contract award.
All right. I spoke with BX Sexton Construction and their representatives this week. We've got everything worked out here. I have the insurance certificate on file. There were no other applicants for the lake contractor position, which we had open for approximately 90 days almost, and not a single application. So thank you once again, BX Sexton Construction, Julie and Bill, for continuing to do these things for us, because we definitely need them. But that being said, if the board is okay with it, the contract this year is set at $6,600 for the maintenance, and I provided in the packet the RFP that went out is what we expect, and the contract that's been negotiated between BXX and Construction and Devils Lake Water District. I have a couple of pages to sign. Oh, this one, I guess.
Do you need a motion to approve that contract?
Let's go ahead and do it since we're here.
Wait, okay. I don't think we have to do it by resolution. So Bill has to step out.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that would be good.
So we have before us the lake contractor contract award to Bill X. Sexton Contractor, and we'll take a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve BX Construction.
All right.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of approving the proposal contract from BX Sexton Construction signify by saying aye.
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 Great. And I'd just like to personally thank Bill and Julie for everything they do on the lake. I know that we don't get billed for everything they do.
Okay.
Yeah. Come back, Bill. Come back.
He knows it. It'll be all right. Okay.
I think he went to have dinner.
Yeah.
Once we get Bill back, then come on back.
There it is.
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
It's funny.
Okay, the next item, I think we are taking care of an executive
Yes.
Yes.
discussion, so we can skip that. Potential part-time positions, you'd like me to?
Yeah.
Okay, given the new equipment and responsibilities of the district between the aeration system, the Airstream Pro, additional monitoring requirements, moving forward with vegetation and sediment removal projects, we need some more staff for a couple of different things in the district. One of those things is going to be technical scientific help with monitoring, sampling, field work, office work, I mean, you name it, kind of everything I do. And that I have looked at our district budget for and found some money for. I think we can, well, not I think, we can afford 10 hours a week right now through the end of the budget period, which will take us through the end of June 30th, 2020, right? Yeah. And graciously and luckily, our summer intern, Alex, has agreed to stay on and help us with some of that additional monitoring work as we move forward for these next several months. She's working full-time as well for the Mid-Coast Watershed Partnership, of which Devils Lake Water District is a charter member as well. So we're lucky to have such skilled, connected experience here with our lake and waterway to help with these things, especially someone who knows their way around the lake, because it's only 700 acres, but sometimes you just never know where you're at. That being said, the next thing the district needs help and needs staffing for are going to be community outreach initiatives. Things like the district Facebook page, which is a great way to get out to the public and get to the community. At this point, it's almost an old way to do it, but it's almost the new telephone at this point. And that's something that we have not had the staff or time or resources to do in the past, because that can be its own monster, as everyone knows, with social media and with outreach and with dealing with press releases and communications. It can become very time intensive, and it helps to have someone that is in control and is responsible for that, who can keep up on schedule and keep up on our regular flow of information, especially things like the Facebook page. That being said, I looked at our budget. We have a surplus this year which will cover approximately 8 hours per week for someone to do tasks such as this. Many other tasks also, I think, will most likely come up as I move forward. I've been putting together a list of management tasks as it goes and working with the board to add things to that and prioritize what we need for the district. And that's one of the things that has came out of these, that's one of the things that has came out of this and where these two positions have came from in the funding analysis, is that these are needs that the district currently has for projects and programs currently running, which is the technical work and the scientific work, equipment and monitoring we're already responsible for, that we need additional staff for, and the community outreach, which now that we have all the additional resources and we have a roadmap, we have our aeration system in, we have several other plans moving, we need someone to keep us connected to the public. We have our very open meetings, of course. Everything's always on Channel 4. everything's on our district website. Our office phones go to my cell phone 24/7. We try to keep the flow of information going as well as possible. That being said, we're all lonely people. None of us are really truly available 24/7. So to have that regular information out there that people can reference, that maybe they have a question, maybe they can't get a hold of somebody right now, but they find a news article or they look on Facebook and they see, oh, the district has a plan for vegetation management, even though I've seen a lot of this stuff out in front of my dock and I'm concerned, but there's the information. And one person sees it and they pass it on, and that's just something I think the district, that's something I definitely know the district needs to get out there.
Josh, one of the things that has come up in a couple executive sessions for Desire is a newsletter. Is this person capable of putting out a regular newsletter to, address all the stuff that you just talked about?
Absolutely, and that's within the scope of work that I discussed with him. Be putting out a minimum a quarterly newsletter, as well as communication and press releases with our local newspapers, some of our online resources which have been really popular, such as News Lincoln County and Lincoln City homepage, I believe it is. And like I said, just making it 360. So all the information, when we have a discussion here, when we have a plan and when we're doing it, the NewsGuard gets it, the News Times gets it, our Facebook page gets it, our website gets it. Along those lines, too, the new calendar on the web page, he could also manage. He has basic WordPress skills. That being said, I think that it would be very valuable for us to, at the very least until the next budget period through June 30th, staff that position and see what we can do with it.
Any discussion?
And just to underscore the conversation a little bit more, as I've read the newspaper the past couple of days, the problems with things like the Dee River Beach advisories and Oregon Health Authority are only becoming more public, which puts more pressure and responsibility on us as a district to both do our jobs and let people know we're doing our jobs. So I know
I had an issue the other day because one of the Dee River advisories came up and was posted on Facebook, and of course somebody attributed it immediately to septic tanks on the lake, and
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it was. I started typing away, just as my
Yeah.
personal Facebook page, and then I erased it because
yeah.
but I think that the district should have a presence there, and that is something that would have been very appropriate for a communications officer, whatever you want to call them, to comment on. And, because unfortunately, a lot of people get their news off of Facebook.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's, anybody else have any comments or? So are you looking for approval from us tonight on those positions, the hours, the budget? What is it that you would need from us?
I think discussion and approval will be good. I don't think it's anything we need a resolution for. A motion, I think, to add the 2 positions on part-time.
So we're looking at a total of 18 hours a week between the 2 positions?
Correct. It's not anything that we have to approve in the board meeting. I wanted to have the discussion out there. It's approved in the budget. We have the money in there to do this thing as we had in the budget committee
And would it
meetings.
start immediately, like as of October 1st, or immediately, or?
Immediately, within 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alex is like, sure.
Yeah, she's good. We'll check the weather.
So, Josh, what's the, I know you've said that there is money left over in the budget, which I do know that, but how much are you projecting to spend of that leftover money? I guess, have you ran
I have ran the numbers. It'd be approximately, if we do not hire these positions, there would be over a $40,000 surplus. If we do hire both these positions in, one at 10, one at approximately 8, those are maximum numbers too, of course, based on district needs. But we would still have an over $20,000 budget surplus. And some of that's just due to availability, needs of the district. We never know how much time an employee is going to have when they're part-time or per diem, and conversely, we never know how much time the district is going to need from them based on projects. Example, there are a couple weeks where Tom may not come in, where he's busy with other projects and work that he's on, and the district doesn't need him. So, you know, we realize that saving some personnel there. So
And
it
these
adds
two
up.
positions would be similar, so if we have weeks on end where we can't get into the water for monitoring, it may not be 10 hours a week.
Correct, and I don't want to put too much on Alex. She already does a lot, and I get it. That's kind of why I alluded to the fact that it'd be more of kind of what I do. So you'd be doing the science work, the technical work, as well as some of the admin and things, because she does know more about the district operations and things that we do, and I could put her on some of those things and let her run with them, as opposed to someone who wasn't really familiar
Well,
with the
and
district.
similar
so.
to the other position you're talking about, because obviously during, you know, in water recreation periods, there's a lot going on.
Correct.
And November through April,
Yeah.
not so much. And so, you know, it could be that there's, you know, admin things that need done, but it could be that there isn't a lot of work to be done, so.
For sure, but I think that I have enough kind of residual work just from the things that we've taken on that can easily be done, and going through these task lists and prioritizing the management tasks that need done. Are certainly some things that I could definitely use more staff time for, that I could use more of my own personal time to do, and working through them. I feel pretty confident that we could easily use that amount of hours.
I recommend that we probably give him a max not to exceed, because we do have to hit our budget numbers, so not to exceed 20,000 for extra staff.
Is it 20 or 25? What did you say?
20,000 would cover both positions
Okay.
firmly for the.
So I
through-
would make a motion to allow you to spend that additional 20,000 not to exceed in the budget cycle. And we'd like to have you be prepared at the monthly meetings to recap,
Certainly.
you know, where we are and what we've gained from that.
Sure, for sure. And, you know, that's something, especially even as the time allows in that budget, that certainly might be a possibility to have. Alex already makes it here when she possibly can, and whoever takes the position, social media coordinating and everything that we want them to do, could certainly show up at the meeting and give us a report on that as well. So
Definitely needed.
I know historically when we've had an intern, at the end of the intern period, we received a project report from them. Is that something that Alex is planning on doing?
I really wanted Alex to be able to do that, but I really used her time to help me sample the lake this last summer, since we had so much extra going on in the district, the aeration program and the initiatives that we've taken on. I needed the help to get those samples processed, get them posted. I know she went out by herself several times even to do the postings at the park. So
Okay.
she went out on a couple of lake cleanups. So, you know, as I mentioned, like a lot of the things that I do or couldn't get to. So that's where we're at. And along with that, I know the district has had a presence, and one of the reasons that we're at Oregon Coast Community College is to add what we can back to the educational community, and we do certainly try to do that whenever we can. I schedule several things throughout the year, presentations, college groups, things like that. And we did actually have a project arranged that Alex had done. It was a community outreach project with the community center. They had put together little seed packets and a scavenger hunt for the community center kids and everything, and they forgot about the time.
Oh, darn.
And they were like 2 hours late, and they called me. I was like, well, we're out
So
at
it's-
Regatta
yeah,
Park
it's set
waiting.
up for whenever,
Yeah,
they
they still have a box at the
want to-
office.
want
Those.
to do it.
So,
The opportunity is there.
yeah, that was the thing that we were
That was the
kind of
project.
going to work on as a project and community outreach and take pictures and give a little thing, but it did not come to fruition, unfortunately.
Darn it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve these two positions, not to exceed $20,000 in the budget cycle. We need a second. Any discussion?
I think it'd be valuable to the district to have these positions available so that we could expose what we're doing to the public in a more,
Friendly man.
yeah,
For fashion.
exactly.
All right. So any more discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for helping us out. Okay, non-agenda items. Regatta Park food and vendor deed restriction removal.
Oh, where'd Miles go?
I think Miles left.
Oh, man.
We went past his bedtime.
He's my guy on that one. Well, last I spoke with Miles, they are still working on it with the city. So we're still in another region of them contacting. I believe he spoke with the city attorney, and they're still waiting on hearing from some family that popped back up on the radar as far as having to cross the T's and dot the I's legally with removing the deed restriction. So no new news on that, unfortunately. Emergency planning is ongoing with Ken Murphy. I haven't worked on it a lot here recently due to other things coming up in the district that needed cared for. But he's on our contact, and I believe that's kind of the discussion that we'd had initially, is that we were going to keep that conversation going as we can and stay connected to the city and do what we can.
I had an opportunity to meet him with some other in my business, and I was super impressed with him.
Ken's excellent, isn't he?
Yeah, what an asset to the
Yeah,
city. And
yeah.
so I think it's great that he's working with us, because I'm excited to work with him on debris end of emergency
Yeah.
stuff, and he has a lot of experience. So
He does. The couple of meetings that we've already
Fantastic.
had, have been outstanding. So.
yeah, great guy. So, all right. Anybody have anything to say? Agenda, non-agenda items?
I have one non-agenda
Okay.
item. It's going to be for Alex again. And what my question is I just wanted to go over kind of what you did as an intern this summer with water quality and whatnot, and what you feel were, what areas that you gained more knowledge, and is there anything else that we could contribute to that to make it a little easier for you to fit in and be comfortable with what you did this last summer?
Well, okay, I'm just gonna give up on that, I'll just talk.
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for a better experience this summer. Josh taught me more, he exceeded the expectations that I had. Not that I had low expectations, but I honestly had never done an internship working in water quality, so I didn't know what to think going in this process. But he did a really great job at giving me a very well-rounded internship, so he taught me the importance of communication and outreach beyond just working in the field, because I already knew that going in. So going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, trying to do public outreach events with the schools and the community center, that is invaluable. And I used my internship as a platform to spring me into what I'm doing now with the Mid-Coast Water Planning Partnership, which that is mainly what I do, is actually communications and outreach for our different partners. And we actually have a meeting coming up on September 19th, which Josh and I will both be a part of. So he has actually been part of the in-stream ecology working group for that partnership, and we will be going over the results of that working group and their findings on September 19th. So I'll actually be representing the partnership and the district.
So it's vastly improved your horizons as far as being involved in all these organizations.
Yes, and it also, being able to stay in the district and keep working has also brought in something new to the partnership as well. So they are constantly saying, we're so thankful to have you represent the district alongside Josh and make it a more holistic partnership, because the idea is to incorporate partners spanning from Yachats, Waldport, Toledo, Siletz, Lincoln City, to address our regional water quality needs and issues, which I think is a lot of what we're concerned about with the district, is water quality.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for all of your time and interest and wanting to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, you had mentioned the NALMS conference and that there were several things on the agenda for that conference that you thought would be really beneficial to us.
Correct. I sent a link out to the board a few days ago, and I didn't want to print it because this agenda is ridiculous. It's like 30 pages long. There are several things in here. I'll briefly look at a couple of the workshops, and it's the role of aeration, oxygenation, and lake management, working with sensors and analyzing data, aquatic plant identification, citizen science, meaningful public engagement for monitoring. I mean, they're all very, very directly applicable to us. The downside is it's in Burlington, Vermont this year, wherever that's at. But it's in November, so it'll be cold. Yeah, but it's something I want to put out for the board. It's coming up in November, so it's probably something we should make a decision on discussion-wise. We do have funding set aside for this once again in the budget for education and outreach. In the past, I know the district has attended. I have not since I've been here. The Oregon Lakes Association conference is also coming up in Bend, early October, like 2 weeks. I look at my phone, but very soon I'm scheduled and I'll be going to that one too, but that's more local. But I did want to get this out there, so when the board gets a chance to take a peek at the agenda, shoot me an individual email, tell me what you think. If it looks good, I can look at getting travel for me and whomever wants to go. So it would be outstanding if we could get more than one person to go, just because there's a lot of content to get to here. So, but
I think it's a great idea for you to go, and I do not want to go.
oh, killing me, Tina.
Okay. Do you know when in November that is, Josh? I can't remember. I haven't had a chance to look at the...
Yeah, and it's a lot. It's a big website. It starts Monday, November 11th. It's not a long time away, and it runs to... Come on. November 15th, 11th through the 15th, so it'll be a week. Our aeration contractor will be there doing a poster session and exhibit
cool.
as well. So when I talked with John today,
Yeah, I
we'll
know
be
you don't
doing
need
that.
approval from us, but I would really like you to attend. I think,
Sure.
I know from our industry conferences and expos that there's always tons of information.
There's new stuff.
Things that you didn't even know you wanted to know.
Yeah. And several other things you wish you could afford.
No, the agenda is excellent. I think that out of all the agendas that I've seen of that this by far pertains to us. I don't think you're going to be able to get to everything that I highlighted that would be beneficial to us.
Yeah, definitely. I have to sit down and get an agenda together because I believe
You're
you
going
have to
put
do
a
that to
matrix
register.
together
Yeah.
of a hierarchy.
Yeah, it's like the special districts when there's so many of them that you just have to pick the ones that you can go to on the website. And
All right, that's all I had. Anything else? All right, with that, we are adjourned.